This season was supposed to herald a new and improved Juventus. However, just 8 months after his appointment last summer, Thiago Motta's era has already ended. Juve's decision to part ways with the pragmatic Massimiliano Allegri had paved the way for a fresh start, with Motta intended to be the face of this new project. This was well deserved too, as he was widely regarded as one of Europe's most promising young managers after leading Bologna to their first Champions League berth since 1964. To support Motta's vision, the club revamped the squad and stood by him even during clashes with the dressing room. However, week after week, disappointing results damaged his standing, and once the club realized he had completely lost control of the team, they decided to sack him with 2 months left in the season. Juve don't have a habit of sacking managers mid-season, but the deterioration of their once promising season demanded it. So, how did it all go wrong for Motta at Juventus? Motta initially guided Juventus to a strong start to the season, kicking off their Serie A campaign with back-to-back 3-0 victories and maintaining a lengthy unbeaten streak thanks to a solid defense. A dramatic 3-2 comeback against RB Leipzig in the Champions League in October rekindled the club's fighting spirit, particularly in a competition where they haven't fared too well in the last half-decade. But this victory came at a heavy cost, as Gleison Bremer's season-ending ACL injury left Motta without one of his key defenders and gradually eroded his team's defensive solidity. Over time, they struggled to maintain consistency and ended up dropping too many points against weaker opponents. Juve still managed notable victories under Motta, including a 2-0 win over Manchester City in the Champions League and a memorable 1-0 triumph over Inter Milan in the Derby d'Italia. By January, the old lady even restarted discussions about a title challenge after appearing to be back on track in the league with 5 straight wins. However, that optimism soon faded after their early exit from cup competitions, which significantly impacted Motta's standing. Juve finished the new Champions League phase in the 20th place out of 36 teams, barely qualifying for the knockout playoffs by just a single point. But what followed was an embarrassing elimination at the hands of PSV Eindhoven, who, in the next round, would go on to concede 7 at home to Arsenal. Just a week later, they were knocked out of the Coppa Italia at home on penalties by relegation-threatened Empoli, who had even rested several of their starters for the match. By the way, if you're enjoying the video so far, subscribe so that you don't miss out on our future videos. Motta's credentials all but collapsed after Juve's 4-0 debacle against Atalanta in the league, marking their heaviest home loss since 1967, followed by a 3-0 defeat to Fiorentina. Ironically, Nicolo Fagioli, who was frozen out by Motta and transferred to Fiorentina in the January window, provided 2 assists to sink his former club. For Juve, these thrashings were particularly damaging not only as they were dealt by fellow top 4 contenders, but because they exposed a troubling lack of intensity and urgency within their ranks. A drop to 5th place in Serie A invited much doubt over Motta's ability to secure Champions League qualification next season. They are still just 1 point away from the Champions League spots, ironically trailing behind Motta's old club. But with resurgent Lazio and Roma breathing heavily down their necks, their position is far from secure. Motta departs the club with a win percentage of just 43%, the 3rd lowest record for a Juventus manager since all the way back in 1930. Stepping in on an interim basis is Igor Tudor, who has 8 league games left to salvage Juve's Serie A season. The stakes are high, as failure to qualify for the Champions League next season, along with the financial benefits that come with it, would all but force the club to sell some of their prized players this summer. Besides the mixed results, Motta's Juve also lacked a clear playing style. As a former player, the Italian was a metronome in midfield, known for his intelligence in dictating the tempo, but this was an identity he failed to impose at Juventus. Without the ability to execute line-breaking passes when opponents closed down spaces, his players often resorted to aimless passing and relied too heavily on the flanks to advance the ball. Their build-up was slow, creativity limited, and possession felt stale. Strangely, they looked nothing like Motta's Bologna side, which did so well last season and whose performances, presumably, got him the Juventus job in the first place. Motta could point to injuries to key players as a mitigating factor, but few would absolve him of blame for his inability to get results from an expensively assembled squad. The fracture between him and key figures of the dressing room was also very visible. His constant rotation unsettled senior players, like Dusan Vlahovic, who has struggled to secure a regular spot up front after an alleged verbal fight with his manager following their Supercoppa Italiana defeat to AC Milan. The Serbian number 9 went on to start only one of Motta's last 9 league games in charge, despite being the club's top scorer even with his limited minutes. At the same time, Juve's other established leaders under Allegri were marginalized and sold. Federico Chiesa, who seemed to have revived his career last season, was transferred to Liverpool last summer after being informed he wasn't part of Juve's new project. Danilo, who captained the team throughout last season, was left out in the first half of this season, even after Bremer's injury before his contract was terminated in January. Wojciech Szczesny retired last summer after Juve signed Michel De Gregorio as his replacement, but later came out of early retirement to become a starter at Barcelona. As if that wasn't enough, Motta dismissed Moise Kean and Fagioli, offloaded them to Fiorentina last summer and this January respectively, only for them to shine at their new club, with Kean now the second highest goal scorer in Serie A. Whether it was his unconventional approach to rotating the captain's armband or his tendency to continually change players' position, there was a lack of clarity in Motta's strategy. Tim Weah, for instance, has played in 5 different positions from right back to centre forward, while Weston McKennie has taken on 6 different roles, and Lloyd Kelly, who was signed as a central defender, has been utilised as a left back. It's one thing to be flexible, but it's another when even your own players are confused about what you're trying to achieve. While Motta should be held accountable for Juve's failings this season, it's unfair for the 42-year-old to shoulder all of the blame. The 192 million euros spent since Allegri's dismissal was more than any other Italian club this season. Yet, statement signings last summer, such as Teun Koopmeiners and Douglas Luiz, who each cost the club over 50 million euros, have struggled to make an impact, particularly Luiz, whose persistent injuries have limited his contributions. The January window brought additional spending, but again, there has been little tangible improvement from poor recruitment decisions that can only be attributed to Juve's sporting director, Cristiano Giuntoli. Yes, he assumed his position in 2023 during what was a challenging financial period for the club, facing 320 million euros in losses and problematic contracts from the previous 2 seasons. But the recruitment strategy to reduce the squad's average age, while sound, was poorly executed, evidence from questionable outgoing transfers that had little to do with Motta. Despite all the criticism that Giuntoli and Motta deserve, a positive development has been the opportunities given to young players from Juve's next generation, who have demonstrated their potential to contribute. Indeed, after years of neglecting the youth system under previous managers, many young players are finally being given a chance. There is a promising blueprint in place, and while it may not be perfect, it should be the way forward for the club. Juventus will now hope that their season can still finish respectably under Tudor. Currently on track for 68 points, they still face challenging away fixtures against Roma, Bologna, and Lazio. 5th place in Serie A might yet be enough to secure Champions League qualification for next season, but Motta's dismissal showed that nobody at the club was willing to take that chance. From the outside, the decision to fire their second manager in less than a year appears more aimed at job preservation. Giuntoli, aware of his own precarious position, took a significant gamble by appointing Tudor in hopes of qualifying for the Champions League. Tudor, a well-traveled coach with an otherwise unconvincing managerial CV, played as a defender for Juventus from 1998 to 2007, winning 4 Serie A titles. He notably spent many years under the disciplined Marcello Lippi, which raises hopes that Tudor can instill the right mentality in this sluggish squad. However, with only 2 months left in the season, whether the 46-year-old can steady the ship during this final stretch remains to be seen. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more football news, stories, and insights. Also, don't forget to hit notifications so you never miss a beat. And with that, we'll see you in the next video.